Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is June 11th, 2024, and this is the Day of the AI Show. And today we will be talking all about Apple's event yesterday and Apple Intelligence. No mistake that they made that also AI, just to confuse everybody. And so that's what we're going to be diving into today. It's talking about what is Apple Intelligence, what did they do to Siri? What do we think about it? For some of us that aren't, some of us are our Apple users, some of us aren't. So we're going to dive into all of that today. Hey, before we get going, we are just as of this morning, we're 3 people away from 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube, but even if you're on Spotify or one of the other channels, just know that, the subscribes, the likes, all the follows, all of that really, really helps our channel. So we're always watching the analytics. I know you hear this from everybody else on every other show too, but it truly does matter to us. So we appreciate it. And if you'd like to be one of those 3, that'd be very cool to help us get over this first milestone over 1,000. And we will continue to grow, no doubt. All right, today we have Junmi, Aaron, Andy, and I am Brian. I almost said I'm Beth, and I'm Brian. Yeah, let's kind of dig into this. There's a lot of pieces and parts to this. They didn't actually get to be fair. It's a developers conference, right? But they didn't actually get to like what the AI side of things until just over an hour in, and then I think it was even farther along, maybe an hour and 20 before they specifically talked about this idea of Apple Intelligence. So does, I don't know, Aaron, I think maybe we'll start with you because you were just saying that before we went live, they were like, hey, I don't use, Apple products, right? So you have just to be clear, you have an Android phone?
Yes, I have a Samsung Android phone to be more precise. So let's put it this way. I haven't owned an Apple iPhone since the iPhone 3GS.
Okay.
Just to give you a bit of an idea. And I moved to Android after that. The first version sucked, and then after it was good, and now it rules. So with all due respect to our Apple audience, I've always looked at Apple as the me too, or the come late to the party phone. Samsung almost always has better technology and better hardware and software before Apple brings it out. I don't know if Apple just likes to wait and see what everyone else is doing before they bring it or what, but I must admit, watching the conference, I did have to laugh at a few things. I'm looking at some of my Slack notes I was sharing with the guys. My first comment was, oh gosh, you can move your apps around on the screen so your dog picture stays in focus. Exciting stuff.
Yeah. Screen mirroring right up there.
Yeah.
There was a few.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. But the parkouring action, that was interesting. And Tim Cook standing on the roof on the solar panels was odd. But as far as the AI stuff goes, because I don't have an iPhone, I haven't used one for, I don't know, probably 20 years, maybe. It's a bit difficult for me to know how good or bad this is in the overall scheme of things. A couple of people I know who have iPhones have said that one of the things they like about it is that it's all sort of integrated into Siri, for example. So you can just, you don't have to open up a separate app. It all works together. So whether that's good or not at this point, I don't know. I thought the fact that you could build or integrate other other AI systems in there was quite interesting. So you can connect ChatGPT in. I think one of the guys made the comment that maybe Gemini will be next in order to stay in the good books with Google, because Google gives them so much money. And then Claude, who knows? So it's going to be a very interesting space to see, but I'll probably shut up. Otherwise, I'll just say bad things about Apple in jest.
No, I think it's good to. I'm glad we're starting with you, Aaron, because, and by the way, I have iPhones and Apple products in the house, but I don't have a Mac, so I'll be interested because Andy, I know you do, but we'll get into like sort of what iPads and things like that and where Apple Intelligence can make an impact. But Aaron, when you talk about you haven't had an iPhone since the 3G or whatever it was, so years ago. When you use your Samsung right now, does it already have like Google Gemini on it? Do you have like sort of a baked in any way AI tool?
No, so I don't have the very latest at the moment. I've only got an S21. I haven't got around to upgrading yet. I have downloaded the Gemini app. I haven't really used it. I've got the ChatGPT app. I do use that fairly regularly. Yeah. I'm kind of holding off on getting a new phone till the technology sort of matures just a little bit more, because the problem is once you buy a phone, unless you want to just go out and burn a couple of grand, you're stuck with it for 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
And in that time, as we all know from just being on this show, the technology changes massively. So I don't necessarily want to be on the bleeding edge of this space on the phone market. I'm fine with it on my computer, but not on the phone.
And I think that's like, before we pivot to, because Andy, I'd be curious to hear, what your impression was. But one of the things you've mentioned either on the show or in our Slack channels or whatever is like, hey, Carl, I believe, was the one that was saying that this would only be available. It was expected this would only be available. This, whatever this thing was going to be that they announced, this new Siri, whatever, was only going to be available at the latest bleeding edge technology devices, and that ends up being true. So they didn't talk about it
plus, I believe.
Yeah, so this is directly from the website, just so from Apple. I mean, Apple Intelligence will be available in beta on iPhone 15 Pro, iPhone 15 Pro Max, and iPad and Mac with an M1 and later, with Siri and device language set up to US English as part of the iOS 18, iPad OS 18, and Mac OS Sequoia this fall. Some features, additional languages, and platforms will be coming over the course of the next year. So one of my questions, and honestly, like, it's on the thumbnail, Apple Intelligence, and of course their site says AI for the rest of us. And I crossed it out and said, some of us, ? And this is why I said that. That's why I put that on the thumbnail, because truthfully, they kept saying about how we're bringing Apple Intelligence to, billions. And then I saw articles after it talking about the event to be like, Apple's bringing this to billions. I'm like, no, they're not. No, they're not. I don't know how many people own a 15 Pro or Pro Max. I have a 15, but it's not the Pro. I'm out. Right? Unless I upgrade to the 16 this September, assuming that it comes out. And then Andy, if you want to kind of jump in here, because you were talking about the M1 chip and how it affects you as far as the Macs that you have at your house and stuff.
That's right. So there is an upgrade path for one of the principal technology hardware companies out there, occurring right before our eyes, which will drive people to upgrade to the more recent devices in order to get access to Apple on-device processing, which is really what the keynote here, I think, is that Apple announced yesterday, not the thing that we were all waiting for. Yes, they announced it, that you can access available ChatGPT if you need it to answer complex queries, but that's going to be like a separate access channel, and it has to be governed by your access there. But what you're really getting here is a glimpse into what Apple's strategy is around devices. So, I'm a Mac user, and I'll just confirm that, all of my Macs are, 2018 and 2017 Macs. And they're big, powerful Macs, but they don't have Apple Silicon in them, and you need Apple Silicon. And there's actually an article on Apple that shows you whether your devices are, compatible with the new Apple Intelligence thing. And none of mine are, with the exception of the iPhone 15 Pro Max that I use as my phone. So I'm going to have mobile access to all of these new features, including Siri. But I'm not going to be able to take advantage of the on-device processing that's available on the Mac line until I eventually, as I will, upgrade to one of the later versions. So it's all out there ahead of us. And this is a long game for Apple. This is not, now they've just failed because they're not delivering to all billions of their customers right away. There's a lot of stickiness in the Apple ecosystem because of its tight integration across devices. And one of the things that was very interesting to me is that, right now with my Mac, I can answer my phone on the Mac. If I'm here working, I can set it up so that the phone basically rings on both my phone and on my Mac as well, and I can have the conversation from my Mac. But what I couldn't do, and I can't do until I get a new Mac and these things come out with iOS 18, is now you can actually connect your phone to the screen and you can work the phone screen on the Mac just like you would on your touch screen on your phone. So you can
That was the
move
thing I was
apps around. You
impressed
can.
with, Andy.
What's that?
I said that was probably the thing I was most impressed with in the whole demo was that mirroring function they showed.
Yeah,
I thought
exactly.
that was pretty cool.
Exactly. So I want to clarify something that I think even the major newsletters are getting wrong about the announcement that came out yesterday. So I'm going to just quote what the Neuron said about this. It said, in the event yesterday, there were no surprises, but a more capable Siri integrated directly with ChatGPT will make the voice assistant actually useful. They're missing the nuance here. Apple revealed yesterday that they've been working behind the scenes on a very competent strategy, which is let's integrate AI into our device ecosystem in a way that gets the right tools to the user in the context of those devices. And what they weren't doing, in which we knew they weren't doing, was they're not trying to compete with Gemini and OpenAI and Claude to develop a frontier model that's at the same level of competence and knowledge and training. And by the way, they didn't spend hundreds of millions of dollars on training an advanced frontier model. So if you look at the architecture diagram that was presented to developers, because this is the developers conference, and it's actually Beth who shared this from Nick Dobos, who showed one of the diagrams in there. There is an on-device language model and an on-device image model in Apple Intelligence. And if and only if you need to get access to the extensive knowledge and training of ChatGPT, you can ask permission, or Siri will ask permission if it's okay to move this onto the cloud and out to ChatGPT. Because otherwise, there's not only these on-device models, but in the Apple Intelligence architecture, they have what they call private compute cloud, Apple Silicon data centers that will access in a private manner any resources that require that higher level of processing power than is available directly on your device. So I wanted to just make very clear something that's not being clear in what people are saying about ChatGPT integrated tightly into Apple devices. It's not. It's a hang-on. And it's a hang-on that's replaceable by Gemini or companion to Gemini and Claude and anything else. And Apple's done a really beautiful job here of doing what they do best, which is making the user experience, really tightly and beautifully orchestrated on the devices. And I've got a bunch of other notes here about from Apple's things that basically reinforce this idea, which is, I think, being overlooked and missed by most of the commentators.
I 100% agree. It's closer to what we expected or what we felt like Rabbit or Humane was trying to achieve, which is this interconnectivity through the apps. What's on your phone and what knowledge is there that could already be helpful to the end user. And I agree with you, Andy. This I will say, I think it's very smart how they did it. And you actually said what I was thinking too, which is they did it in a way where Siri is asking permission to go to some large language model. That today, that's ChatGPT. Tomorrow, it could be Mixtral or Claude, or maybe it'll be all three, or maybe it'll ask you which one you want to use. We don't know. We don't know what kind of deals. They just said, hey, it's going to start with ChatGPT, which is they quote unquote the industry leader, and then there'll be more to come. Is basically they did. It was like a 3-second blurb on that. So I think it is really smart because they're not putting all their eggs in one basket either. Meanwhile, like you said, Andy, what I don't think is getting as much credit, because you just hear a lot about Siri and ChatGPT, and I agree with you. That's not really the story. It's actually what they're building on the phones as far as the large action models and what Siri can do. And I think it's pretty brilliant because I think there's going to be two things. One, I think this is going to introduce a lot of people to ChatGPT based on yesterday's conversation about who knows about it. It's going to introduce them to ChatGPT in a very easy way. So that's one thing. But on the device, I think this is actually using AI in a very smart way, in a very Apple way, which is to say privacy first, and protection. You can trust us, right? That's the Apple way. You can trust us and your data, even when you're using this, and it's staying on the device. And two, it's actually in a way that people are going to be using AI in a day-to-day, which is, hey, my mom's coming into town. That's the example they give. When does she arrive? And then the lady who was presenting said, oh, when is our lunch date? Because we have lunch plans. And Siri was able to, in the demonstration that we saw, we'll see if this is all true, Siri was able to say, oh, I know where your lunch plans are. I know the location, the geolocation of your lunch plans and the time. And I can see, and I've gotten an update on when the flight is arriving. And I've looked at the distance between the two of them. And in one simple answer, Siri is able to come back and say, it looks like you'll be able to make your lunch plans based on everything I know. That is super powerful. And I think that is a true representation and expression of how people are going to use AI every single day in going forward. So I was really
I referenced this architectural diagram, and to that point, they have a display on this diagram that shows all the apps on your phone across a bar on the top. And then there's two different components that are inside the device. One is called the semantic index, and one's called the App Intents Toolbox. And those are things to try to understand what these apps are doing and whether they're relevant to something that Siri or writing tools or the image generator, may want to call upon. And it's going to expand the number of the apps that are on your phone that are supported by those toolboxes in order to make access to your apps part of the Apple Intelligence process. Let me just read just the one sentence thing that I think captures Apple's perspective on all this thing. Apple Intelligence harnesses the power of Apple Silicon, not ChatGPT, to understand and create language, images, take action across apps, and draw from your personal context to simplify and accelerate everyday tasks. That's just one sentence that tells you that's the focus and that's their strategy. They're not reliant on, in order to be comparable to what ChatGPT is, to use ChatGPT. Apple Intelligence is something of its own nature. Now, then there's this whole idea of private cloud compute, and I'm going to use it to draw this distinction between what happens with private cloud compute and what happens if you get permission or give permission to go out to OpenAI servers. So private cloud compute is a new standard of privacy, as this is a reading from the Apple news release, with the ability to flex and scale computational capacity between on-device processing and larger server-based models that run on dedicated Apple Silicon servers. That tells you that that data center is not ChatGPT. Now, what they say about ChatGPT is privacy protections are built in for users who access ChatGPT. Their IP addresses are obscured by Apple, and OpenAI won't store those requests. ChatGPT's data use policies apply for users who choose to connect their account to ChatGPT. It's outboard. I want to repeat that. So what that means for Siri, by the way, is that Siri, being much more capable in responding to, voice interactions that you have with it, was really, something that had to be done because it's really horrible. And I can give you an example just yesterday of me flummoxed by Siri, refusing to do something that I know it can do, just because it doesn't understand me. It's something weird. But Siri, they've been working in the background on Siri and its advances, that they are not dependent on ChatGPT's voice interaction skill in order to do that. Siri is something that's within Apple Intelligence, not dependent on OpenAI. However, there might be a partnership between OpenAI and the Siri team and Apple to help Apple in the context of the huge distribution advantage that ChatGPT just got over all the other frontier models by being incorporated into Apple's billion user ecosystem eventually. In exchange for that, OpenAI may be assisting the Siri team in how to get to the natural language fluency that ChatGPT demonstrates now with 4.0.
So can I ask you guys a question about this? Because when I was watching this demo last night, the thought that was going through my head was, has Apple actually created their own, completely own AI system, or are they quote unquote white labeling somebody else's product? Any thoughts on that? Or any?
Well, that's my central thought, Aaron. That's what I've been saying.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
their own.
again.
It's their own.
It's their own. Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I just looked at it and thought, yeah, okay, obviously they've got ChatGPT as a plugin, but how much work have they put into building the other thing aside from the hardware chips, for example?
So I'll give you a TLDR. They did not invest in an advanced frontier model to serve the world with generalized knowledge, but they did an AI exercise that's device processing focused and integrated seamlessly into their ecosystem. It's a new version of AI for users that's tuned to what you want to do with your phone and with your computer.
Now, one of the things I didn't see yesterday, they did updates on Watch OS, I think they call it. And I was just thinking about my wife in this because I've said this many times that she uses Siri on her watch a lot. In fact, more so since she got the watch at Christmas time. But that's not okay. Apple Intelligence, the way I understand it, is not going to be available natively on the watch. It can't be that small. I'm assuming is probably one of the problems, the silicone or whatever the advanced chip it needs. But I was curious. I don't know if you guys know the answer to this. Like, if somebody has a watch and they have a 15 Pro or 16 right in their pocket, does that mean that the watch and they say, "Hey Siri," on there, goes and uses the information from the phone and brings it back to the watch? Or do you just have your basic old Siri on your wrist? Your phone, like if you pulled out your phone, it's the better one, right? If assuming you have the 15 Pro or more, but the watch is still stuck with old Siri because it would be like having a 15 or a 14 or whatever. It doesn't have the capability to do it. Just sort of a random question, but I was curious because there's so many people I know that, have an Apple Watch. Are they limited basically to it? So I don't know if there's
I don't think any of us have an Apple Watch or use Apple Watch. Anybody? No,
my wife does.
But Apple Watch is connected to the Apple phone, right? So you're connected. You can either get an Apple Watch that has 4G, and so you're connected to the cellular service, and so it has direct access that way. But there's a lot more capability when you're working it with your iPhone. And so I believe it's true that if you have an Apple Watch, and I don't know that the new Siri will be compatible with it, but you can use Siri from your watch using the phone's power and capability.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are going to be curious about that. But oh wait, hold on a second. They didn't say it'll be available on the watch, and so there's that gray area of, well, if I have it in my pocket, does that mean the watch is now capable? So sort of an off thing. But I think there's people that are probably curious about this as they're hopefully they're listening to this show, and just like us, they're thinking, okay, I mean, I'm in that group now. I'm on a plan where I can update my Apple phone every year. That's just like, it doesn't really change my payment or whatever. So I will update to the 16, but I would have anyway. I've never really been that happy with the 15 to begin with. So I'll happily upgrade, and that should, whatever that is, will handle this and be able to do the Apple Intelligence. But for you guys, or I guess, Carl, do you have an iPhone? I can't remember.
Yeah, I have 15 Pro.
You have a 15 Pro. So you don't even need to upgrade. You already have what's available. And Andy, you said you do as well, right?
Yep.
15 Pro. So you guys are already good. You don't even have to worry about it. What about on the Mac side? Andy, do you feel like this, given everything you learned yesterday with Apple Intelligence, do you feel like you'll be inclined to upgrade sooner than later with one of your Macs? Because
I've got to wait till September when they make the announcements about their new devices.
Sure. And
my guess is I'm going to wait until then. But I don't want to give up my old machine, but I'm going to have to. I started literally after the show yesterday. I started looking on what's the least expensive way to get to a powerful Apple with an M2.
But Andy, well, I mean, you can access. They've got M1 through M4 chips now, and they listed those as all compatible. So yeah. Just get a cheap refurb and to let us know how it all works.
Man,
Plus, they also said
I don't have much time left, Junmi. I've got to stay at the head of the curve, ahead of the class here. Not
well,
Time
well,
off.
they're only going to release in September. They're only going to release like iPhone 16, right? I don't think they're going to come out with the new Macs, because didn't they just come out with a new Mac and a new iPad?
Don't they do it like in March?
But Apple
Yeah.
Intelligence could drive a faster cycle on the generations here.
I do think though, just in terms of upgrading to Apple device, especially like a version 1, I would say, like, I remember from an iPad, just remembering the iPad, I got the first version of the iPad. The second version was much better. The third version, like, I know it's better, but like if we're looking at this, I would actually think there's a bunch of things like, so I have a 15 Pro. I actually downloaded the iOS 18 dev version yesterday to take a look at what it can do. And I feel they're going to make improvements to that. But I think like the second year is going to be much better than the first year, because the first year is just going to be a bunch of people trying to figure out how to do it. And they're releasing the app intent. So obviously developers are now going to either integrate it into their app. But again, most people don't know what to do with it. So I feel from an just pure Apple perspective, it's going to follow the life cycle of, oh, we need to do this. The second year is going to be that much more integrated and tighter. So I think like that's when you'll see the really productivity rather than like the first version. And yeah, so Nika said I often get hooked in getting the new first and then waiting for the third, fourth. I was like that, but I found I'd rather just wait for the second version than get the first and then whatever. I do want to point out though, I think we're having the difference is Apple, which is AI as a feature, versus ChatGPT AI as a product. And both can exist at the same time. Like, you could use one or the other. I feel one is very more personal to you. So like, hey, there was a good point. I saw a post this morning saying there's a difference between, hey, I want to know when my mom's plane landed, versus, hey, you remember all those emails that I saw? I need you from those emails and all those notes to help me create a business that I can get a tax benefit out of. Two very different requests. You can't make that request in Apple. That wouldn't work, because just, all the things that need to do. You can make, I think that's from an AGI perspective, a higher reasoning. That's what you'd use a frontier model. So there's still two different use cases, and I think
why wouldn't you be able to, Carl? Because because the Apple side of it, I'm okay. So let's take some assumptions here. The emails, the notes, the documents, the PDFs, they said you'd be able to look through all of that with Siri. So why wouldn't you be able to ask a question like that with Siri?
Because I think the connectors you'd have the emails, but if you want to create a business, wouldn't you want the connectors to your Notion, to your Google Drive, to your all those things? Yeah. Like, you wouldn't just take an email. You would take, hey, I need you to do this, but then it would look at the entirety of it.
Yeah.
And
by the way, when they on the screen yesterday, when they showed this cloud of different apps for on-screen awareness for the mobile device and then for the Mac, application arena, Notion was displayed. I caught the Notion icon on there. Sure. So yeah. I think that you're right. Well, I think what you're saying is that there are certain advanced queries or high level reasoning requirements that you might have like, let's generate a business plan. That's not going to be within the ken of the onboard language model. It's like going to go out to ChatGPT or somewhere else. But I think hopefully they'll figure out a way to orchestrate that so there's kind of a seamless experience. You end up on the same device, but with ChatGPT driving the interaction between Siri and the other applications on your.
So the question is, though, that it'd be interesting to see, because I think now, because did any of you get the 2.0 upgrade, the Mac OS 2.0 upgrade? No.
I don't have Apple Silicon.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
PC user here.
So I just got it, and the camera's there. You can't use it, so that tells me it's like it's coming. Like that's so I wonder if the Mac OS will have the vision and the real-time voice capability, or is Apple building towards that? I don't know. Maybe that's their plan, and that's why they want a partnership with OpenAI until they do, and then. But I think we're all, regardless if it's Apple Intelligence, ChatGPT, you kind of get excited over the next couple of years of what you can do and what you'll have, and what everyone will be able to do it, and who's going to be able to take advantage of it.
Well, I think the main takeaway here from Apple, and everyone's kind of touched upon this, is they've approached it in the Apple way, right? Like you said, Carl, it's approached as a feature as opposed to a product. And so those kinds of larger AI requests, those who want to use AI to its full capabilities, that's not what they're trying to sell here. What they're trying to sell is measured, dip your toe in, because we've seen from the last report that we saw from the Routers report, right? It's 7% who use it on like ChatGPT on a daily basis. That is a small percentage of people. That means most people don't even know about ChatGPT or other AI, right? So this is Apple's way of going, hey, wouldn't this be a quality of life improvement for you? Well, this is how we're doing it. We're building out this Apple Intelligence. Like Andy was talking about, they were talking about all of the privacy and how they're interconnecting and integrating everything, because that's Apple's selling tool. That's what is that's the best feature of their product. And so I think their approach is probably the best way, like you said, Brian, to bring people into it, because now they'll be able to ask Siri for a little more than their normal. They're going to see this. They're going to see this bumped up quality in their experience, and that's the main difference. Like you said, Aaron, it's not innovating brand new technologies or anything like that. You're going to see this stuff on Android and Samsungs and all those kinds of things, but it's packaged and made better. And I think that's the key thing that Apple's always brought is, hey, we have this integrated experience. It just works, and you don't have to worry.
You definitely don't get that full ecosystem that all talks to each other nicely on the Windows/Android world. And for all of the fun I make of Apple at times about things, that is one of their strengths, is that fact that everything all works together and talks together. And if you're all in on their products, that's a real strength, I think.
Well, you have to, I think, going back to Brian's point, though, if it's only available for 15 Pro, there's only going to be so many people who will upgrade. I still know so many people who have
See, I think that was purposeful so that they didn't have to work with backward compatibility issues, right?
No, but that's what I mean.
Of course drive more sales.
Yeah. Of course.
But to have the line in the sand saying, okay, this is the hardware that it's going to work with, then if you're already in the ecosystem, it's easy to upgrade. Brian just said he's on a upgrade your iPhone every year plan, right?
Yeah.
So that's coming in from the cellular providers and things like that. If you're like Andy and you have a Intel based as opposed to Apple Silicon based system, then that encourages movement in that direction. Now, I think you're right. We're going to see it's going to take a year before it's like the better or best version of it. But if they didn't draw the line right there saying, hey, it needs to be our top technology. If not, we're just going to have headaches trying to make it all work for past products.
I also think what my point was going to was more of, you have the technology, but how many people also end up using it on a regular basis? Like, the assumption is, everybody will. I'm like, yeah, you could. And it was interesting because I was testing out, and it was really neat because you could say, hey Siri, I want you to create an email for this person. I want you to, and it's actually pretty seamless. It's like, okay, Here's the email. What do you want it to say? Here it is. Sounds good. Do you want me to send it? Yes. And that it kind of did that, but it does it much better. Like, it actually shows you what it's doing. So that's kind of neat. And I can't wait to see what other people build that you can actually voice interact the entire thing to make, because you do have agentic features now. So we're just waiting to see what people integrate and how they build it out. And I'm sure there'll be some really cool things that you could say and speak to. Or just natively, I'm curious to see if there's any native voice. So an app that is driven entirely by conversation. Like, it's conversation first, not tapping first. So you just talk and you can back up to that. And that's kind of like, I feel that's kind of how we're going to interact. And let me know, actually, I'd really love all your thoughts. Do you think, based on that conversational AI or conversation, do you think more people will be using conversation to initiate or engage in tasks or with their apps, or will it still be kind of a while away because people are so used to tapping and stuff?
I actually think you're right. I don't know if you're saying you agree with one. I think it is going to go more towards voice, and I'm I don't know. I was the first person to say, like, come on, it's just easy to tap. But I always tell this story, and it's the truth. In like 2002, something like that, I was in Australia, and everybody in Australia was texting, and I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, why would you text somebody when you could just call them? So clearly, I don't know. You know what I mean? And I always think back to that and go, like, yeah, I was telling my Australian friends, like, nobody is gonna text. I don't know what y'all are doing over here.
Yeah.
I was in Sydney in my buddy's car, and I was like, that's ridiculous. So there you go, right? Like, you don't really know. I actually know. If I just look at my wife, if I look at my daughter, if I see my friends around, if I'm out at a bar or whatever, I hear more than I ever have in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I definitely think there's a trend towards more voice. And as they showed with the iPods, right, it was like incoming call from Mima, and the guy's in the elevator, and he just goes,
Gam.
just no, I don't want the call. Can I say really quick? I know we're on time here, but one of the things we haven't talked about. So I just think about my family. I'm a family of 3. Okay, am I going to want the latest iPhone so I can play with Apple Intelligence? Yes. Okay, but I also am on a show about AI. That's a given. My wife has an Apple iPhone XR, so like a 10. She loves it. She, other than the storage space, which is now becoming a problem, she loves it. Would she upgrade for this? For a couple of Genmojis, for a couple I can make the balloons pop on a thing. She already can use ChatGPT on its app, so she doesn't necessarily need that. That'll be an interesting one if she sees and she goes, oh, I want my apps to be able to cross-reference across each other and do that. That would be very helpful to me. I could see that being the upgrade for her, where she actually this year would make the leap to the newest iPhone. So I'm curious on that one. My daughter uses her iPad for both for watching YouTube and stuff, but also school. I think Apple Math, as stupid as it was when they're like, coming to the iPad, the calculator, and you're like, the what?
Yeah, we all laughed at that.
Calculator. But then if you guys remember, they showed the hand drawing of the algebra, and you draw a line and it helps you solve it. And as they were updating the algebraic equations on there and algorithms, it was helping you update it. I think I will have to see. I will wait, but I think that's going to push me to upgrade my daughter's iPad. So I guess it would have to have an M1 chip.
Just for the calculator?
For the Apple Math, the Apple Math, and because I can see her, she already uses, like I've told you guys 1,000 times, she already uses Siri predominantly. So the idea that Siri would say, that sounds like a better question for ChatGPT, when I ask her, she goes, bink, and does it. I 1,000% see my daughter being a very, very, and she's going to love the Genmojis. That's, she's 13, right? So that's all going to be in her wheelhouse anyway. I truly think, I don't think I'll update her phone, honestly. Her iPad, though, because of the way she uses it for school right now and how she's getting into the higher level math. Yeah, I do think so. I don't know. I would have to see what that cost is, but I think it can make me.
It's an interesting thing you said there, because as I've made pretty clear, I'm not really an Apple fan. But if I was going to buy an Apple product, I would probably consider the iPad with the I think it's the M1 chip in it. Because I've got a really crappy Samsung tablet that's years old and as slow as all hell. I could see myself maybe buying an iPad one day with that functionality in it, because that would be available as standard by that stage anyway. So I wonder how many people will go down that path. But
Yeah.
I think every device is going to have this stuff in it in the next couple of years anyway. So
Sure.
Well, to provide a little bit of context, I have an iPad Pro from 2021, and that has an M1. It was the first model to come with an M1.
Okay.
So
you can get a few years.
and they just released new models of iPads with M4s. So you've got a whole range of refurbished and used equipment that people can get
Which will definitely
dirt cheap that can take advantage of it. So
Plus,
upgrading,
the brand new.
good. The phone upgrade, though, I don't think we're going to see mass adoption for that until iPhone 17 comes out. So 2 more generations, because that means the 15 Pro and Pro Max will be something like $300 or $400.
Right. Yeah.
And there's always the delay, right? The flagship represents the best that they have, but the vast majority that people have are always at least a couple generations behind. And that'll be the big shift before it's in everybody's hands.
And you're right. The shift is always with Apple. Whatever the 15 Pro has right now will be the basic 16. The 16 Pro will be the basic 17. They've followed that pattern now for several years. So you're dead on with that. It's probably going to take 1 or 2 before people feel like they can get a used phone that has Apple Intelligence on it. So yeah, sorry, Andy. I want
to close out with one other interesting point. It's a tidbit, but Apple has an operating system, iOS, Mac OS, etc. They are in the core of things, and so does Google. Google has Android. So they have an operating system, and Microsoft has an operating system, Windows. And those are the 3 major operating systems out there. Now, Google didn't have, a device strategy for their operating system other than for the phone. So they don't have a computer operating systems, hence Chromebooks, right? Oh, no, use the Chrome browser on a general purpose laptop that doesn't have a whole lot of other features and functions from the operating system. Okay, now there's a lot of power in owning an operating system, and there's an unstoppable wave of upgrade and refreshment of that system. So again, back to the point, this is the long game. And despite your desires to, get the latest and greatest, eventually, if you're in the Apple ecosystem with iPhone or with Mac, you're going to have access to all these powerful tools. Now, Elon Musk said, if Apple integrates OpenAI into their operating system, then I'm going to, make it, so that no Tesla or ex-employees can even have an iPhone. Yeah. You will not have an iPhone. Well, I just want to reassure all the employees who are afraid of Elon Musk, leveraging that power. Apple did not integrate it deeply into their OS. They have their own AI in their OS, and they have access to ChatGPT.
Well, I think on the interest of helping Jimmy here, who makes all our shorts, let's end on what will be a really great short, Jimmy. Okay, so we're going to go around the horn and we'll just end it here. Based on everything you saw yesterday and maybe the conversation today and future follow-up blogs that you might have read since then, did yesterday's event and what Apple announced miss the target for you? Did it meet your expectations, or did it exceed your expectations? So let's just go around the horn really quick. Carl, what do you think out of those 3?
I was just more looking at the predictions, and I was a little disappointed Sam Altman wasn't on stage or pre-recorded. That was the only
money on that one. Right?
Yeah, I had a little bit of that. I think though I never really had expectations, knowing that it was more just like any Apple thing. It's gonna be a year. Like, we all concede the things where you're not gonna get it for a while. When you get it, are you going to use it 100%? No, because the apps aren't built for it 100% yet. So you have to wait another year. So that's, again, like it's exactly how I upgrade. I want to wait till next year when what is Apple actually going to come out at dev to really enhance. So I was more of like, I can't wait for the future, but this is just the start.
Aaron, what do you think? Did it miss, did it meet, or did it exceed?
So, given my lack of real-world experience with current Apple products, outside looking in, I was underwhelmed. with few exceptions. Now, if you stuck one of the devices in my hand and let me use it for a couple of months, I might come back to you and say, that's amazing. I love it. But at the moment, I wasn't overly impressed.
Andy?
Exceeded. I had been worried as an Apple fanboy that Apple was actually behind in AI. I think they gratified me that they're not. And I'm excited about the agentic capabilities on the iPhone of interoperating with lots of other, apps from the App Store, using onboard device intelligence, which is what we've been talking about on the show for a long time. Things are getting smaller. Apple's at the vanguard of that.
I'll say for me that it met my expectations. I think right in line. It's kind of what I expected to come out, and it did. They did it differently than what I would have predicted, but I still think it met my expectations, and I'm reasonably excited about what's coming out in the future. Jimmy, take us home.
I think they exceeded my expectations because they promised low, and now they just need to deliver high. Every other big tech company does the flashy video, promises the world the AI can do everything, but Apple measured it by just saying, you're going to get these specific things in these specific styles. Don't expect more than that. And it's going to take over the year to get everything that you want. They set their expectations at the right level.
But they did have parkour.
Parkour. But look, tomorrow's show is the news. So if more comes out on this or more stuff, I'm sure we'll circle back to this again, but we'll leave it there for today. This has been a good conversation, and I think it'll be interesting to see where this goes. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with the news. Until then, thanks for hanging out with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and go over to our website, The Daily AI Show, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter where you get more content that you can't find on these live shows. All right, until tomorrow, guys.
Bye.
Aloha.